Released in 2012, Celeste and Jesse Forever is a film that looks at love in an honest way. It portrays the messiness of breakups and asks, what happens when love isn't enough? Initially, the movie flew under my radar. In fact, I didn't see it until 2018. In hindsight, Celeste and Jesse Forever definitely seems like the kind of movie I would like, but at the time I couldn't get myself to care about it. To be honest, that was mainly because of this guy. I'll be honest, at the time I found him really annoying, and Rashida Jones, well, I've always thought she was fine. I loved Parks and Recreation, but, well, not because of her. She was always overshadowed by everyone else. I know that was by design, but it still made her less memorable than other characters. The movie centers on the titular pair, played by Rashida Jones and Andy Samberg. They met, fell in love, and got married at a young age. However, unlike most romantic comedies, there is no happily ever after. Instead, the film gives us a more realistic and nuanced look at love and its dissolution. Celeste and Jesse Forever understands that love doesn't fit into a smooth three-act Hollywood package. Life isn't always neat, and it doesn't wrap things up in bows. In love, we don't ever reach any sort of finish line. We have to keep working at it constantly. Not only that, but sometimes love isn't enough. Two people can truly love one another and still fail to make it work. Celeste and Jesse Forever shows this perfectly. The fact that they love each other is never in question. However, it's plain to see what's coming. The movie opens with a bittersweet montage detailing their romance. It packs the usual rom-com narrative into a concise package. In a couple of minutes, we witness their meet cute, we see them falling in love, and eventually getting married. Unfortunately, it also shows the beginning of the end for their relationship. By the time the movie actually begins, they're already getting divorced. Of course, you wouldn't know that by the way they behave. They share a closeness and intimacy that we wouldn't expect from people separating. They still have inside jokes, spend almost all their time together, and Jessie even lives in a studio in the back of her house. It's not until we see them on what initially appears to be a double date that we realize they've been separated for 6 months. It's an arrangement that works for them, but not one their friends approve of.
What the fuck are you two doing?
What do you mean?
Yeah, what do you mean?
What do I mean? You two are not together. It's not normal, okay? You guys have been separated for 6 months. You're getting divorced.
Their friends don't understand how Celeste and Jesse could act like everything is normal. In fact, they don't understand why they broke up in the first place. But even though it's evident they love each other, it's also clear they have very different personalities. Celeste is very ambitious and career-oriented. On the other hand, Jesse is more interested in catching waves than finding a job. He's the kind of guy who's more inclined to sit back and let things happen. This was something they couldn't overcome. And as Celeste puts it,
The father of my children will have a car.
and frankly, that's understandable. She wants to start a family with someone who can contribute equally, not another person she has to take care of. However, they seem to think they've managed to have the perfect breakup. And as unconventional as it might be, it works for them. At least for a little while. Unfortunately, their illusions come crashing down after a drunken one-night stand reveals they're not on the same page. Although she still loves Jesse, Celeste is ready to move on. Because of this, Jesse feels rejected and pulls away. While Celeste is away on a work trip, he reconnects with Veronica, a woman he had a fling with. Because he finally understands that it's time to move on, Jesse allows himself to have fun, and he winds up hitting it off with Veronica. This is really fortunate because he finds out she's carrying his child. But when Celeste suddenly finds Jesse unavailable, she begins to miss him. She came home very eager to see Jesse, but she wasn't ready for his news. Rashida Jones got a lot of acclaim for her performance, and for good reason. The scene where she learns Jesse's having a child with another woman is raw, emotional, and genuinely moving.
Excuse me 1 second.
Even though she didn't want to rekindle their romance, you can see that Celeste assumed Jesse would always be there. She didn't actually expect to lose him, so the fact that he'll become a father shattered those illusions. She realizes she's on the verge of losing something she assumed she would always have, and she's really frightened. So even though they've been separated for 6 months, it feels like this is where the relationship truly ends. And it doesn't take long to realize that the breakup won't be perfect. One of the most refreshing things about this movie is that it doesn't sugarcoat the breakup. Instead, it shows it honestly, warts and all, without pinning the blame on one person. There is no victim or culprit, because in real life, both people are usually to blame. And the film isn't afraid to show that breakups are messy. The fact is that people rarely move on at the same speed. When one person holds on, the other lets go. One of the reasons Celeste was doing so well was because she thought she still had Jesse. The fact is that during breakups, people can be selfish. In a way, Celeste saw Jesse as a safety net. Usually relationships don't really end until one person moves on. Celeste claimed to be done with the relationship, but like Jesse, she was still holding on. However, life is always moving forward, even if we want to stay where we are. And he has a way of giving us a push, even if we aren't ready for it. When Jesse decided to make it work with Veronica, he opened the door to starting a family with her. But he also effectively closed the door on Celeste. This makes Celeste panic, and like many people going through a breakup, she doesn't always behave in the most mature way. In fact, at times she's downright self-destructive. It's not an overstatement to say that Celeste was shocked by Jesse's news. Up until this point, we've seen Celeste act like she was okay with Jesse dating other women. At times, she even seemed completely indifferent. However, the reason for that was that she didn't actually think they had potential.
And I'm gonna date people.
That's great.
Yes?
Yeah. No, Jess, please don't cry again. Good for you.
Doesn't bother you.
No.
Okay.
Now things are different, and she's far from okay. She realizes that she wasn't as over him as she thought. And that's very common in breakups. Sometimes we think we're fine until we see the other person move on. And this sends her into a tailspin. We see her go on dates with people she's not even remotely interested in. She goes on a date with a guy whose name she can't even remember.
That's Mac.
It's Max.
Matt.
Nope, Max.
Nice.
Whether she means to or not, she's self-sabotaging because, well, she doesn't really want to move on. Even when she meets someone who has potential, she doesn't give it a chance because she's still holding on. It's clearly over and Jesse moved on, but she's not ready to let go. And we could all understand that. Even when something is over and the moment has passed, we hesitate to move on. We want more time. We want a do-over. We want to stay where it's familiar because it's hard to start over. Change is scary and there's comfort in familiarity. We see that in Jesse as well. When he gets scared of the approaching monumental responsibility, he doesn't talk it over with Veronica, the woman carrying his child. Instead, he turns to Celeste, because with her it's familiar. When feeling overwhelmed, we often retreat to where we feel safe. And starting over can also mean ending things. It's hard to close the door on something that was part of our lives for a long time. It could feel like you failed something or wasted years on it. And we can't forget that when it comes down to it, people don't want to be alone. Okay, so I know that's not exactly a groundbreaking revelation, but it is true. And it's also the reason why people stay in situations longer than they need to or should. That's part of the reason why Celeste and Jesse held on to each other for so long. They didn't want to start over and they didn't want to be alone. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that being alone is hard for a lot of people. And that fear of being alone can be amplified when we see that our ex has moved on. It makes us wonder if we'll find someone or what their new partner has that we don't. We find ourselves suddenly trying to change, unaware or unwilling to admit that it's over. We're shocked when it's too late because we thought we'd always have more time. However, it was slipping away right before our eyes. We see Celeste go through this in one of the best and most powerful scenes of the film. Celeste and Jesse meet at a bar with different intentions. She admits her mistakes and asks for another chance. However, when it doesn't work out, they have a blowout. Hurt feelings and resentment boil up to the surface. It's a powerful scene, and they both shine.
Veronica, okay? I'm trying to change.
Why did you change for me?
I don't think you really wanted me to.
Wow. Wow. All I did was wait for you to grow up. I rooted for you. I fucking paid for everything. I did everything for you.
Yeah, and I was never your equal. And you know what? I think you preferred it that way.
Eventually, they run into each other at their friend's wedding. There, they make up, and while it's clear that they still love each other, they understand that it's over. They're going their separate ways and have to leave that love behind. When they finalize their divorce, it's clear they've reached a better place. But it's a bittersweet moment all the same. It's apparent they love each other, and perhaps they always will. But it's still over. All that's left is the pain of what could have been. Because when a relationship ends, it's not just the end of the life you once shared. It's also the end of the future you plan to have. That's not to say it's a perfect movie. At times, it delves into broad comedy that feels at odds with the tone and like it belongs in another film. And there are some tired rom-com cliches shoehorned in. It makes you think the filmmakers didn't have enough confidence in the story.
The song is my bitch, yeah!
That is a party.
I don't think it's over.
What, her butt? No, it goes on forever. I got this.
Oh, she's about to get it.
But its drawbacks don't derail the film, and it's certainly worth checking out. Celeste and Jesse Forever manages to fabricate a world populated by real breathing people, which is not something all romantic comedies can claim. Both the leads give great performances, and they have wonderful chemistry. Rashida Jones is charming, entertaining, moving, and sympathetic. She absolutely owns the film, and it's a shame it didn't make her a bigger star. Andy Samberg is entertaining without being overbearing, and he's surprisingly earnest. It's not something I would have expected from him at the time, and it foreshadows how much he would eventually grow as an actor. On a side note, Palm Springs was one of my favorite movies of 2020, but that's a topic for another video. Celeste and Jesse Forever is an honest look at love that is both poignant and heartbreaking, but it also portrays what happens after we fall in love. It reminds us that love isn't a magic potion that automatically leads to a happy ending. The movie portrays the dissolution of love, the messiness of breakups, and how hard it is to move on and start over. It reminds us that while love is universal, that doesn't mean it's always enough.